Hey everybody, mel0n here, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about the SkyPad arm sleeve, or sleeves I guess I should say, because there's a bunch of versions of them. The reason I didn't cover this before is because there was a huge lack of information on the SkyPad's website about what this sleeve was. To the untrained eye, this just looks like a standard fabric arm sleeve, and there's actually a lot of cool features about this sleeve that are on a lot of high performance sleeves that are on the SkyPad sleeve, but the website doesn't highlight them. So that's a big reason why I didn't cover it at first. So now that I know about it and actually tried it on my arm and actually know about all these features, I wanted to give this a review and tell people about the other features, because it turns out this is actually like a really slept on arm sleeve and it does perform very, very well. So I wanted to give it a full review today. So that's what we're going to be doing, but let's go ahead and get right into it. Quick little disclaimer before we get started. I purchased this SkyPad sleeve for myself. This was not sent in by SkyPad, so this review is not endorsed or sponsored by SkyPad in any way, shape, or form. As usual, if you were looking for a particular topic, there will be timestamps down in the description and in the comments. And if you have a particular question about the product I do not cover in this review, feel free to leave a comment down below and I'll do my best to answer your question. So the SkyPad sleeve has a bunch of sizing and a bunch of different models. Now this is where it does get kind of complicated, because the SkyPad sleeve I currently have right now is actually no longer available. However, the exact same sleeve is available on SkyPad's website as the Sora sleeve. I spoke to a SkyPad rep and they told me that it is the exact same sleeve, so there are no differences in the actual material makeup of the sleeve. It is just a design change on the newer sleeves, so keep that in mind as we go forward. So in terms of sizing, there is a small, medium, and there is a large, extra large. There is an arm long version and a palm long version, so arm long going from your lower bicep all the way to your wrist, and of course the palm long being from your lower bicep to across your palm to the base of your fingers. They're all made out of 80% polyester and 20% spandex, and the arm long version comes in at 19 USD and the arm palm comes in at 22 USD. Today I'll be looking at the arm long version, and that is the large, extra large version. Now, one thing off the top I would say is that it would be nice to see just a standard white and black version of the SkyPad sleeve with an inverted logo available all the time, because some people necessarily aren't going to want the anime design that is on the Sora sleeve, and of course they're going to cycle them out for newer sleeves down the line. I have a feeling that some people may be turned off from buying them because of the design, so it'd be nice to see just a standard white and black version in the near future on SkyPad's website. Now, in terms of the actual feel, the sleeve actually fits my arm great. Again, this is the large, extra large version, and I am a bit of a taller person. I'm about 6'2", so with my arm, it actually does feel very good. It just very nice skin tight feel, very minimal stretch on it, which is nice to see. Overall, it's quite good. The material is a little thicker. I would put it in between the Pulsar ES sleeve and the Focus Pro sleeve, but it's definitely more closer to the Focus Pro sleeve. The material is still breathable, but because it is a thicker material, if you do get it wet with sweat and that kind of stuff, moisture, it will hold onto it fairly well. So definitely, if you're going to be using a sleeve and you do get it wet, I would recommend hanging it up somewhere to air dry overnight. Don't just bundle it into a ball and toss it into your desk. One of the things we have to cover is some of the features that are not covered on the SkyPad website page. So this sleeve does actually have a dual silicone band upper bicep sleeve. Now this one is a lot looser than the one found on the Focus Pro sleeve, but of course the Focus Pro sleeve is designed to be a compression band. This one is a lot looser, but it still does maintain a very solid grip on your upper bicep. Now, one other interesting feature about the SkyPad sleeve I did want to talk about is the actual stretch of the material. So if you take the SkyPad sleeve and compare it to the Pulsar ES sleeve or the Focus Pro sleeve, you'll notice that the Pulsar ES sleeve and the Focus Pro sleeve have a lot more lengthwise stretch, and then they do widthwise stretch. However, the SkyPad sleeve has a lot more widthwise stretch and basically no lengthwise stretch. Of course, there will be a little bit of stretch because the spandex and the material. This lack of lengthwise stretch prevents bunching up of the sleeve at your wrist. So if you're using this on higher friction pads, it will prevent the sleeve from bunching up and making wrinkles. It also really helps with the fit because it does keep it very tight to your arm, and it does also allow for some expanding in certain areas to kind of accommodate your arm a little better. But this kind of inverseness of the stretch of the material does actually help it feel a lot better overall. The banding on the wrist is also quite good as well, does have a fair amount of elasticity as well, so it'll be very compatible with a bunch of different arm sizes. Now, of course, whenever we talk about arm sleeves, we have to talk about stitching quality, because stitching quality can make or break a sleeve. Now, I will say the SkyPad sleeve overall across the board has fantastic stitching. It's actually very, very, very well done. A lot of the stitching is very minimal, which is really nice to see, especially around the wrist, where a lot of other sleeves have this very thick banding stretch around the wrist to maintain the elasticity. The SkyPad sleeves one is actually very minimal, so if you're going to be using the SkyPad sleeve on harder pads like a SkyPad or an IKEA Glasses Serapad Kin, any kind of hard pad on the market, you won't feel that weird bump on the base of your wrist that you can feel on thicker sleeves, which is a very nice thing to see. The top banding on the bicep is also very solid. Overall, the stitching is just very good. The only area I've had any stitching fail is one stitch on the wrist, but I believe that is just from me overstretching the material trying to fit my giant hand through the end of the band. So that's more of a me problem, but overall the stitching has held up incredibly well. Now, one really cool feature about the SkyPad sleeve that they again don't mention on the website, but I think is something that is worth noting, is that the SkyPad logo that is on the lower wrist area of this sleeve is actually stitched into the sleeve itself. This is not printed on after the fact, which I think is a very very, very good thing, because this is one big weakness of a lot of arm sleeves I've seen on the market, specifically ones that are designed for using on glass pads. So the reason why this is so important is because over time, as you use the sleeve, especially if it's on a harder surface or a higher friction pad, the sleeve will eventually start to turn a little bit, and it will definitely start to turn around your wrist. And what commonly happens if you're right-handed, of course, is that the logo that typically sits on this side of your arm will slowly pull down and be down here. Now imagine if you're playing on a glass pad and you have a silicone logo printed onto here that's stuck to the base of your hand, and you're using it on a glass surface, which can cause stickiness, an insane amount of extra friction, and can actually pull the sleeve off your arm in some situations. This was one big fault of the Pulsar ES sleeves, because they had this giant silicone printed on branding on the entire side of the sleeve, and because the whole sleeve's elasticity was so weak during use, this piece of plastic ribbing basically can go under your wrist and stick to your entire arm and almost prevent the entire sleeve from moving on glass pads. So this is a great feature that, again, they should be highlighting on the website, because a stitched on logo makes this sleeve significantly more usable across all pads, but specifically glass pads. This is something that I really do think all companies should be doing. Pretty much every arm sleeve I've used in my experience, over time, eventually the wristbanding will loosen and the sleeve will turn over time, especially on higher friction pads, meaning that if you have a printed on silicone logo here, it is going to end up under your user's wrist at some point over the lifespan of the sleeve. So this is a really, really nice attention to detail from SkyPad. Alrighty, so let's talk about the SkyPad sleeves performance. So what I did for this one in terms of my testing is I broke this down into 3 categories. So we have control pads, hybrid pads, and speed pads. And what I ended up doing is I booted up Kovacs, I went to Kovacs intro scenario, and I did 3 runs of Kovacs intro scenario with the same mouse, the SkyPad sleeve on each one of these mouse pads to kind of give a rough idea of what I was looking at in terms of performance. Now, in terms of the control pads I tested, we have the Aqua Control Plus, we have the Pulsar Paracontrol V1, the Vaxi PA, and the HyperX Pulsefire Mat. These were the highest friction on the SkyPad sleeve, of course, because these are control pads. They're going to be very rough surfaces, with the exception of the Vaxi PA, because that's a bit of a softer hybrid-ish surface, but it's still a control pad. It is still usable, but of course it is definitely a higher friction experience. I actually did an extra run of the Kovacs intro scenario without an arm sleeve, and I had better overall accuracy and performance on just bare arm than I did on all the sleeves. So it's not to say that the SkyPad sleeve isn't usable on these pads, it's more of just you're probably just better using your bare arm or a totally different material arm sleeve. Now, in terms of hybrid pads, I tested the IKEA Black and the IKEA Patterned and the Focus Ambition. Now, this is where I found that all the arm sleeves kind of performed pretty much exactly the same. So the Focus Pro sleeve, the SkyPad sleeve, and the Pulsar ES sleeve all performed pretty much the same on these ones. They were all completely usable. I would say like medium friction depending on the surfacing. I know the friction on the Focus Ambition is a little higher than the other ones, but it was still completely usable. I didn't really have any issues with it, and it didn't impact the game performance in any way, shape, or form, and scoring was consistent across all my scenarios. The final group of testing we did was the speed pads. So this included the NPET Speed M, the IKEA Glass, the SkyPad 3.0, and of course the Serapad Kin. Now, this is one area where both the SkyPad sleeve and the Focus Pro sleeve performed extremely well. I would say in terms of which one is better, they basically traded blows up. The scenario scoring was very similar between both of them, and like any variant in the scoring was probably more due to the mouse skates on the different surfaces I was using more than anything. So I would say they were pretty much equal in this scenario, very similar to hybrid pads. Now, in terms of which one's better, really comes down to personal preference. I guess you can say you can give the edge to the SkyPad sleeve here because it was cheaper than the Focus Pro sleeve. So from a price to performance comparison, you can give it to the SkyPad sleeve, but this is going to be very similar in performance to the hybrid pads, where they both just have very, very good performance. It's just going to be coming down to which sleeve you prefer the fit over. Now, one thing I did want to highlight about the SkyPad sleeve that I found very interesting is that across all the groups of pads I tested, I did find that the SkyPad sleeve was very resistant to wrinkling, bunching, and it maintained its grip on my wrist very, very, very well. Even on the way higher friction control pads such as the HyperX Pulsefire Mat and the Aqua Control Plus, I didn't have any issues where there was any kind of wrinkling developing on the bottom of my wrist, which was causing bumping on the pad and extra resistance. It actually felt very consistent overall. Now, of course, your use case may vary depending on the size of your arm and the size of the sleeve you order, but for my large, extra large one in my arm, it fit perfectly. I had no problems at all, which was very impressive. Now, keep in mind, this is a newer sleeve. Of course, I've only had it for about 3-4 weeks, so the elasticity may be very good now and it may not be good in the future, which is exactly what happened with the Pulsar ES sleeves. So if there is an issue with the long-term longevity, I'll definitely make a follow-up video in the future. Overall, I'm very, very impressed with this sleeve. Again, I thought this was just like a standard cloth sleeve. I thought this was literally just like an athletic sleeve you get off Amazon for like 10 bucks with a SkyPad logo slapped on the side. I did not know that this was a high performance sleeve, which again is partially my fault for not researching the product more, but also it definitely have to put some blame on SkyPad here because there is just no information about this product on their website. It says sizing, material makeup, price, and some photos. It doesn't even tell you it has a bicep band or like a stitched logo. Like, it doesn't tell you any of these things. SkyPad, the website, needs more information. You need to highlight the bicep band, you need to highlight the stitched in logo, you need to highlight the wrist, you need to highlight the stitching, because this is a sleeve that is designed for glass. If I missed the fact that this was a high performance sleeve, think of how many other people who have bought SkyPads have also passed the sleeve up because they think it's the exact same thing as just a generic arm sleeve from Amazon with a SkyPad logo slapped on it. Now, of course, they may have had proper marketing pages for this sleeve, which is no longer up on the SkyPad's website, but basing on how none of the information that I found about this sleeve is on the current SkyPad website for the Sora sleeve, I'm going to assume it didn't exist in the past either. But overall, this is a fantastic sleeve. I'm very, very impressed. This is an awesome sleeve. I will definitely be keeping it in the rotation. If you are in the market for a good sleeve at a relatively good price that just have very good performance, I would highly recommend checking out the SkyPad sleeve. Again, you may have to wait a little bit for them to make some non-anime designs or maybe just stock some regular colorways in the future, but overall I am very impressed and I do think this is a really good sleeve, and I'm kind of upset that I haven't talked about this before because this sleeve is really slept on. But thank you again for watching. I greatly appreciate it, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.